The Federal Reserve cannot evade the situation. Therefore, if inflation remains at its current level, the Fed cannot raise interest rates to a genuine level without triggering a recession, which will cause the stock market to plummet. However, even if inflation decreases slightly, that will indicate an impending recession. Hence, raising rates amidst a recession will lead to a recession. The outcome will inevitably be a recession either way. It's simply a matter of whether the Fed perseveres or gives up. This scenario mirrors precisely what occurred between 2013 and 2019. In May, Bernanke announced the tapering. There's an expectation to start the tapering in September, but he backs out. The tapering commences in November 2013 and concludes in November 2014. Then Yellen arrives and signals rate hikes, removing the word patient from the statement. She doesn't raise rates until December 2015, and then not again until December 2016. There's a whole year between 225 basis point rate cuts. Enter Powell, and suddenly there's a 25 basis point increase. The hikes continue, reaching 2.25, the desired level, and the balance sheet starts declining to about $3.5 trillion. The aim is to reduce it to about $2.5 trillion. However, he has rates where he wants them. The balance sheet is on the decline, and normalization is underway. But what follows? The stock market experiences a 20% crash between October 1, 2018 and December 24, 2018, famously referred to as the Christmas Eve massacre, with a 3% drop in a single day. Even though the Fed is still tightening, they tightened just a week before the massacre, tightening despite the market's vulnerability. In 3 months, they managed to drag it down by 20%, nearing a crash. So what's the next step? In the first week of January, Powell announced no more interest rate hikes. They'll exercise patience, using these coded words. Then, rate cuts begin. Quantitative easing kicks in. It might be QE 8 or 9. It's hard to keep track. Let's say it's QE 8. This carries on into 2020, and then the pandemic hits. Rates plummet to zero, and the balance sheet balloons to $7 trillion, surpassing the state in May 2013. But in a worse state, as the balance sheet is even larger now, a complete failure. Who believes they will succeed more this time? They're repeating the same strategy. It'll happen faster this time, because the market witnessed the 7-year debacle from May 2013 to May 2020, a 7-year cycle of failure. The same will repeat, but it'll unfold quicker this time because the market knows the Fed is clueless. The Fed is tightening amid economic fragility. One of two outcomes is inevitable, though it's uncertain which. They'll persist in tightening and trying to control inflation, ultimately crashing the stock market, or they'll lose their nerve, ease on the tightening, and rampant inflation will crash the stock market anyway. Choose your poison, but one of these outcomes is certain. However, the notion of a smooth landing is absurd. 2021, the thesis was that inflation surged. Part of it was due to base effects in how the government calculates inflation, comparing monthly data year over year. Therefore, explaining inflation in April, May, and June 2021, due to comparison with 2020, the year of the severe recession since 1946. Yet, despite the base effects wearing off in September, October, and November, inflation persisted. It's now evident that this is genuine inflation, stemming from other factors, specifically the supply chain, which the Fed has no control over because they don't drill for oil, build pipelines, or cultivate wheat. The Fed is helpless in addressing these issues. Factors such as war, sanctions, and the ongoing effects of COVID-19 are playing their part. So, you're entitled to your opinions, but not your facts. The data is conclusive. Inflation is here, and supply chain disruptions are worsening. However, these supply chain disruptions did not commence with the war or the pandemic. They began during Trump's trade war in 2018. I came across an insightful book by Lori and Larocco on this topic. What's interesting is that the book was finalized in late 2019, almost like a controlled study pre-pandemic. It's easy to attribute supply chain disruptions solely to the pandemic or war, but this rigorous study showcases supply chain chaos before either event. The issue stemmed from tariffs on China, and China shifting soybean orders from the US to Brazil. It sounds straightforward because Brazil cultivates soybeans, but there's a need for shipping logistics to Brazilian ports and an entire reorganization of the logistical pathways. This was already ongoing before the pandemic, and the war has compounded the situation. Yes, the global order is crumbling. We're witnessing a decoupling, the end of globalization as we know it. There will likely be a new iteration, perhaps involving the Five Eyes, UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Western European allies, forming a new trading bloc that excludes China and Russia. It could resemble the Cold War era. I discussed this with Paul Walker. Here's what happened historically. The cost-push inflation emerged following the Arab oil embargo in 1973, post the Israel-Arab War, leading to a quadrupling of oil prices from $3 to $12 a barrel. Although it sounds inexpensive, it's a 300% increase. Subsequently, a severe stock market crash and recession. And then came the Fed's departure from the gold standard under Nixon's administration in '72, paving the way for inflation. Another oil shock ensued in 1979 after the Iranian oil embargo, a supply-driven cost-push inflation. However, it transitioned into demand-pull inflation. I experienced this firsthand as a young lawyer at Citibank in New York City, a period marked by rapid price increases, where any purchase required immediate action to avoid higher prices. This narrative is instructive in multiple ways. It illustrates the Fed's lagging response and the prolonged endurance of these phenomena.